Hello everyone, I hope that you're all finding these Easter reflections both helpful and useful. My name's Steve, I'm a Verbum Dei missionary. I'm based here in Rye-Gladesville Parish at the moment. This is our Verbum Dei chapel in Rye-Gladesville Parish. And I've been around the world in different places, mostly in the Philippines and Spain, but all around the world. So we're up to the 13th station. So the 13th station is Jesus dying on the cross. And I thought for this, we'll take our meditation, we'll take the part of the Luke's gospel. So it's going to be Luke 23, verses 44 to 46. And it was now about noon, and darkness came over the whole land until 3 in the afternoon, while the sunlights failed and the curtain of the temple was torn in two. Then Jesus, crying with a loud voice, said, "Father, into your hands I commend my spirit." Having said this, he breathed his last. So the first thing that struck me in this passage when I was coming to pray with it was going from now about noon until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So this length of time really caught my attention. 3 whole hours. Jesus was on the cross for 3 hours. And a lot of the time when we think of the crucifixion, or me anyway, I often think of something reasonably quick, because in most of the movies, in most of the times when you think about it or you see it, he's nailed to the cross and then he dies fairly quickly after saying his last words, all the different parts. But 3 hours hanging on the cross in agony, and I was praying a little bit about that, like how much would those minutes have dragged on? How painful. Have you been there waiting for something, or have you experienced something for a long period of time? It's not easy. And one thing that came to my mind was an experience I had when I was in the Philippines once. I visited a group of contemplative nuns. They're called the Pink Sisters over there. And I remember they had a big chapel in there, and I was sitting in the chapel, and while I was there, one of the sisters came in from the side, and she's quite old. She was about 80 or 90, and she had a walking frame. She came in from the side very, very slowly, and little by little, shuffling with her walking frame, she crossed from one side to the other to visit the statue of Mother Mary that I had on the other side, on the right-hand side. And for me, I'm not joking, it took about 10 to 15 minutes to cross from one side to the other, because she could only take really, really small step and then rest and then go again and then go again. So I remember just sitting there watching it, and because it really, have you been there watching something for 10 minutes straight? It takes a long time. And I was seeing that she was doing it all out of an act of love. Like every single effort, every single moment, all was towards this act of love. In that case, she was going across to offer up a flower and a prayer and asking for the intercession of Mother Mary. And then she turned around and went back, and it took again 10 to 15 minutes going back the other way. And wow, so I was thinking about that, and Jesus himself in this moment was offering up his act of love on the cross as well too, for 3 hours. And I was praying that it says in the Bible, the next part was that darkness came over the whole land, little by little. And I was praying a bit with that. Can you imagine this scene where the light is fading step by step along with Jesus' time there on the cross, because it slowly became more and more dark. And can you imagine that Jesus himself was fading little by little as well too. His life because he was dying in that moment. So I was praying with that image of the light fading away and then Jesus' own life fading away. And I was praying a bit about, can you relate to the same thing in our lives? Like, have you had times where little by little, the light of your life is also being dragging away, dying away? Can you see it in the society around us in different ways? And do we ourselves let the love of Jesus fade away little by little and let it die within us in our own lives? And I'll think of my own experience as well too. This is going to be quite experiential, but I remember when I was always Christian to a certain extent. I was raised in a Catholic family, but I remember I had a big conversion experience when I was about 22. And in that moment, I really chose to put Jesus at the center of my life. And I think in that moment, I went to a youth camp with a group called the MGLs, if some of them might know. My sister's a missionary with them. And when I went there, I had this feeling that when I made this decision to really put Jesus in the middle and really live my life in a different way, that life was going to be much easier, or that life would change. But I remember when I came back home, because I was living at that time in my hometown, I didn't really have the people around me. And I remember that love that I felt, that light of Jesus in my life, faded little by little, actually. With many times I got more and more involved in all the things I was doing with my friends, with my sport, with my socializing, not going to church, not many things actually in that moment. Like I found it little by little, that light that I had, that love that I had, that passion that I had, faded away a little bit. And I think that this can happen in our lives with God, with Jesus. And we need to be on guard to it. Light slowly fades if we don't be careful. But I was also praying a bit about this, that it actually is our life. Our life is like that. Little by little, there's fading that goes on within it. Like at the beginning of our life, the process is towards getting bigger, getting stronger, getting more capable. But then after a while, it actually goes back the other way. We become less capable, become less useful, become less healthy. The things we could do when we're 20, we can't do when we're 40, and we can't do when you get older again. And little by little, things do fade in our lives, and we have to learn to accept that and learn to understand it and to value it as well too. And it really made me think a little bit. I had to study a bit of philosophy, and there was one philosopher called Heidegger from Germany, which some people might know pretty well. He's pretty famous. But he had this philosophy, or one part of his philosophy was that where we exist towards our death, is that one thing we can be certain of is that we're going to die. And I know this could go a little bit negative, but his idea was not so much negative, but it was like, are you living authentically? Because we know that we're going in one direction. You can't go back the other way. And I was thinking that maybe it's not such a bad idea to pray about death, to pray about what it really means to die. And this is what we do in this meditation. We think about Jesus actually dying on the cross. And I think a lot of our society is actually built a little bit towards delaying aging, delaying all the effects of life, going towards death. But actually we need to pray and understand what do we really need to do in the moments of death. And we look towards Jesus in this. And we notice that Jesus, it says very clearly, he cried out to the Father in this. He had this trust. Lord, in your hands I commend my spirit. And I was praying a bit with that, in that this abandonment that Jesus had. He understood our theme of this meditation, these group of meditations is be not afraid, I am with you. Jesus understood it. He understood it in a very clear way from what the Father had revealed to him his whole life. Even as early as in his baptism, in Luke 3:22, for example, you can look there and you can see that he heard the voice of, you are my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. It was what he understood about his whole life. And I think that each of us need to discover that as well too, so that when we come to these moments of death, these moments of trouble, that we don't lose sight of the fact that we have this Father that loves us, this God that is with us and tells us not to be afraid no matter what we're going through. And I was praying a little bit about that, especially because in these moments of the coronavirus parts and stuff like that, especially I was living in Spain for 5 years, and I've still been in touch with a lot of people over there, where there's almost 1,000 people dying a day, and there's a lot of people dying alone. And I was praying a little bit, especially about how important it is to know that in whatever we're living and all the parts that we're going through, we're not alone. We have God who always tells us he's there with us. And I was praying a little bit, especially because one of our priests, he couldn't go visit his father when his father was dying. And as a priest, he's used to visiting many people and giving the last rites, but he couldn't in that moment. But he was also understanding, I believe, that the God the Father would be there, and he is always there. And we've got that trust. So I was praying that how beautiful it would be that if we've got the same desire to do the same, to say in all of our little deaths, when we're being patient with someone, when we have to forgive someone, when we're struggling with different parts of our life, that we can recognize that we are God's beloved Son, that we can hear him say, be not afraid, I'm with you. And we can pray with that today. So we can just finish with a little bit of a prayer about that. And I was thinking we can say very simply, Lord, grant us the trust that when our time on earth has finished, our spirits may come to you without delay. And we can have that trust that no matter what, you're with us and you love us and we're your beloved children.